Welcome to the Herald Opponent Overview, where we break down the other guys and how they stack up against New England week to week. The Patriots defense provided 2 upsets in week 8, one to the Chargers and one, unfortunately, to my fantasy team. Well, how about them Cowboys? 4-1, first in the NFC East. I mean, talk about a glow up. It's very hard to start Patriots players in fantasy. Their offensive scheme is just so tricky. But I would say this week, you could flex in Nelson Aguilar. Last but not least, let's talk about not 1, not 2, but 3 brothers that qualified for this year's tournament.
It would be great to see all 3 of them make match play.
Yeah, I mean, talk about golf genetics that run in the family. Defensive end Myles Garrett commented on Mac Jones' ankle grabbing, saying, quote, he hopes it doesn't happen to him. Well, touche to Myles, I'm sure Mac Jones also doesn't want to get hit in the head with a helmet. It's been like performance ping pong for these 2 teams so far this season. So there is no doubt that today is going to be a down-to-the-wire duel for multiple reasons. So let's break it down.
Who do you think needs to sit in this big game?
Oh, well, we know him. You loved him as a Patriot. Maybe you still love him as a Buck. But Rob Gronkowski. Now, he had an injury in week 3. The rib x-rays came back negative for fractures, but he could still be not as productive as we'd want him to be. Sticking with tight ends, Jonnu Smith. Last week, he went 1 of 6 in receptions for Mac Jones. He really should be more of a top target for him, more reliable than he was, and he really fell flat. So I'd say bench him if you have him. Expect the unexpected. As we saw in week 2, a lot can change week to week in this league. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, ask a New Orleans Saints fan how they're feeling today. Until Sunday, the Saints were seen as a threat. Week 1, New Orleans sent Aaron Rodgers and the Packers packing. Head coach Sean Payton had his team running like a well-oiled machine. His defense looked dominant, quarterback Jameis Winston looked promising, and overall the Saints just looked solid. But week 2's loss to Carolina, of all teams, proved that there were some serious cogs in what once was a week 1 Saints well-oiled machine. The Saints didn't see the scoreboard until the 4th quarter. Winston had the touchdown, but that was the only big highlight for him on the day. He went 11 for 22 for 111 yards with 2 interceptions and took 4 sacks. To compare and contrast, those stats are coming off his week 1 performance where he went 14 for 20 for 148 yards with 5 touchdowns, no picks, and no sacks. Compile Winston's week 2 stats with just 48 yards rushing on 17 carries. That's a measly 128 yards for the offense on the day. Unfortunately for Winston, he led his offense down a 2 for 11 third down and 0 for 2 fourth down road, raking up 11 penalties along the way for almost the same amount of yards that they gained on the day. But Winston and the offense's weak performance weren't the only cogs in the team's machine malfunction. New Orleans' defense looked like Freaky Friday. One week they're a threat, the next week, not so much. Carolina quarterback Sam Darnold walked all over the Saints defense. He threw 26 for 38 for 305 yards and 2 touchdowns. Plus, Darnold's offensive weapons basically all got some time in the spotlight, making 17 grabs for 216 yards and 2 touchdowns, most notably led by DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. And although he's the best running back in the league, the Saints let Christian McCaffrey run wild with 72 yards rushing and 65 receiving for 137 yards total. That's more total yards than the Saints offense got on the day. And also, while you're at it, just throw in a touchdown for McCaffrey as well. But as the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I think at this point we can say New Orleans' week 2 loss was trash, but it just made week 3 a little less daunting for us here in New England. But just as we saw things change for the worse in a week for New Orleans, the Saints can also revert back to opening game status in week 3. Plus, although the Patriots are coming off a win, they didn't look stellar enough offensively to rule out the Saints just yet. Bottom line is, regardless of week 2, as head coach Bill Belichick would say, we're on to week 3. And regardless, the Saints matchup this week will be a really big test ahead of game 4 against no other than TB12 and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Massachusetts Amateur Championships. I'm Alexi Iafrato, here with Tom Fargo, and we're going to be breaking down the top golfers you need to watch in this year's tournament. All right, so Tom, let's tee things off with one of the best college golfers there is in the game right now, and that's former U.S. Junior Amateur Champion Michael Thornbjornsson from Wellesley High.
Michael's had a fantastic amateur career. He burst onto the scene in the 2018 Junior Amateur where he won. He's made the cut at the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. He's probably one of the favorites coming in this week.
That's great. And then going from young to a seasoned vet, let's talk about Frank.
Yeah, Frank Fanta Jr. He just never seems to age. He's almost 60. He's coming off the the New England Senior Amateur Championship, and he's made match play here over 20 times, and he's in good shape today after shooting a red number.
And last but not least, let's talk about not one, not two, but three brothers that qualified for this year's tournament.
Yeah, the Frodies out of Westwood. Patrick is the 2018 champion, and brothers Will and Danny also qualified this year. They were all stars at Westwood High, and it would be great to see all three of them make match play.
Yeah, I mean, talk about golf genetics that run in the